action-packed workshop for you. We know you're going to gain a lot of experience from it. Some things may scare you, but it's all in love. We really want to take this middle school Monday workshop up another level. We're seeing all across the country that now middle schools are really being recognized, not only recognized, but publicized. So we really want to make sure our middle school ADs and coaches in North Carolina know the rules, know the policies and procedures, have ample professional development where you can get and gain knowledge that will help you in your programs, that will help you with your parents, that will help you with your administrators, but most of all, help you with your student athletes. So again, we're gonna have a really action-packed for you on today. We ask that you stay all 4 sessions, and those of you who are faculty, okay, who are faculty and have teacher certifications, when you do your QR code, that will allow us to get the information. And those of you who want continuing education credit, we will send you a survey, a 2-question survey, either at the end of the day or first thing tomorrow morning. You can fill out, and then once you fill it out, you will automatically be emailed a 0.4 hours of continuing education credit. So we wanted to make sure we do that every year. Apologize for not presenting myself first. My name is Bob Hill. I'm one of the co-coordinators for Middle School Monday. I am president-elect of NC SHAPE. I work along with my other partner, who's a co-coordinator, Deanna. And Deanna will be presenting our speaker for our first morning session. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, my dear friend, Deanna Moore.
Hey, welcome. It's so good to see some familiar faces. Welcome back. And to those of you that are new, welcome. You are in for a treat. And this room is sponsored by North Carolina SHAPE, NC SHAPE, with the high school, with the Athletic Association, who's one of the fingers of NC SHAPE, as well as NC Coach, NCCA. And so I'm going to introduce Jim Bazluki, athletic trainer coordinator at Atrium Musculoskeletal Institute Sports Medicine, also at EMT. He is in the North Carolina Athletic Trainers Hall of Fame over 20 years, and he taught PE and health at ECU for over 20 years, master's in health ed ECU. I'm sorry, it was 10 years you were athletic trainer at ECU. He also worked with Carolina Panthers. Also taught at Southern Durham and Cary High School, and he's an instructor for 11 years at the North Carolina Athletic Trainer Association Sports Medicine Symposium. If there's any topics that you want to know from Jim, please email us, because he's our first session every middle school Monday, and you're out there on the front lines. Your interest is our interest. All right, let's give him a big round of applause.
If not, I have to make the topic up myself. And it may not exactly match what you want sometimes. So I'm very receptive to anything you guys have. And because I was trying to think of what's pertinent, what's on the hot topic kind of things for middle schools, it's not too different than what's ever on the same burning plate that's for a high school and those kind of things. I thought this year we kind of hit a few other highlights of things that have either fallen by the wayside, not high on our radar, but should always be on our radar kind of things. And then plenty of time to ask questions and say, well, what about, and stuff like that. As Deanna had said, and Ms. Grable said, the middle schools are becoming more and more on the radar of a lot of people. You know, before the focus was always high school, high school, high school, high school, and stuff like that. And you guys know it. middle schools offer the exact same sports as the high school, but with 10 times less resources. But yet your expectation for winning, your expectation for fields and facilities, your expectation of your coaches, the demands on those coaches and ADs in that same realm, and your duty to care for those student athletes has stayed the same, if not risen, over the years, but you still have no more resources to work with in that sense. So as I go through this, certainly ask questions, stop me, whatever kind of goes in there. The first part is just about concussions. All right, they will never leave the radar, but realize that there are things that we must do because it's part of the law, that over time either we forget about, nobody raises the question so we don't get back to it, kinds of things. If you do not have someone at your school who is designated as an athletic trainer or first responder, all right, it is the coach's responsibility to do these things. So if you suspect the possibility is there that someone may have a concussion, they got hit in the head, they're not acting right, they're not feeling right, they must, by law, be removed. If you are not that type of provider, which I doubt any of you are, being in this room compared to a different room, you're not the one that can make that decision. If you believe there's enough reason to pull them out, there's enough reason that they don't go back in until they get seen by an appropriate provider. Almost, you'll probably have a 0% that appropriate providers are going to clear them and put them back in the game. At every level, once they get pulled out and we evaluate them, they're done for the day. All right? You are seeing at the middle school level, we call it doctor shopping. The parents have some vision for this child to be the next whatever, and they will not accept the fact that if they don't play the rest of this game today, that will affect their trajectory for their entire professional career based on that quarter of a game that they weren't going to play anyway, kind of thing. So it's easier to say it's school policy, it's state law, we can't allow this, this is how it goes. But the best way to do that is with your parent meetings pre-season, just to say, this is the process. We can't change it, it's the law. Takes it off your plate of, I'm letting you, I'm not letting you, whatever have you. All right, so they must be removed. If they get diagnosed with a concussion, they show enough symptoms and stuff like that, the law also says they must have a return to play program. Now, that may not be immediate. It may be they're symptomatic, they're having problems, and then several days later they start RTP. The biggest argument we get with parents right now, and occasionally coaches, is the doctor cleared them to return. No, the doctor didn't. The doctor cleared them to start the return to play. They go to the doctor clears them, they come back to you, now they start that return to play protocol. It's not an immediate, I left the doctor's office, I play that day. There's a process. And if you explain that ahead of time, the doctors sometimes mess it up. And sometimes it's the wording and how they say it, and we all hear what we want to hear when we go to the doctor sometimes. I got cleared. You got cleared to start the process. You weren't cleared to go on the field. And they know that ahead of time, that once the doctor clears you, it's still going to be at least 5 days. All right, then that helps solve that, well, the doctor cleared him, you gotta let him play. No, I don't, kind of back and forth. Be upfront with it. The high school association has the forms, so if you're like, well, where do I get these forms? I looked on DPI's website. DPI defers all those forms over to the high school association. They're all on the high school association website. Do everything on those forms. If you ever got in trouble or someone yelled at you, that's the form you're gonna have to document that they could, should have, they did the steps, all those kind of things. All right, that's how you back yourself up with those things. So it must be recorded. Also know that we're in here talking about athletics. That same law that says that stuff for athletics also requires a return to learn program. So academics must be included in this care plan. There's two different things. When can they come back and run around and smash into things? And how do I make accommodations in their classroom? Both pieces must be there. Now, it's not necessarily your job as an athletic person to do the academic piece, but you need to have a team of people that takes care of a concussion. Your first responder, you, the coach, and then somebody on academics, whether that's the school nurse, a school counselor, an assistant principal, whoever, to coordinate the academic piece. Because I still run into it when I used to be in the high school, it's testing time. Oh, well, just take this test as a practice test, it doesn't make a difference what you score. No, they're not supposed to be tested. They're not supposed to do this. It's part of the plan. Just like you have coaches that go rogue, you have teachers that like, the rules don't apply to me either. I'm an important subject, or whatever have you. All right? So just know that there's an academic piece that is required by DPI and the other part, and they're both codified in the law. So it's not an option. Also in the law, it's all one big law, you're supposed to have an EAP, emergency action plan, that should be written out. That is supposed to be posted at every venue you participate in. That includes off campus. If your team, swimming I know is a whole different thing, you guys don't swim in middle school, do you? Most of you, no, it's just a high school thing. Cross country, track, if you're off campus for those, you go to a park, you're supposed to have an EAP. Now maybe you can reach out to the parks and park recreation, maybe they have one you can just use. All right. When I would practice at a facility or even on my own campus that was like a temporary kind of thing, I had my EAP and I laminated it and then hung it from a garden flag at state. So that I could take it, put it in the ground, I was covered, and then when practice was over, either I took it back inside or I put it in the shed, because that same area was gonna be used by 50,000 other people. And I didn't need grandma at 9 o'clock at night walking on the track calling me because I'm on the EAP. Kind of thing. So it can be in a temporary situation, but if you're using the facility, especially in a shared facility, you should have your kind of stuff there. Part of that EAP is that how many of you actually discuss the EAP with your staff?
Our AD discusses it with us, but when I'm there,
Okay.
we have an AD.
So not a whole lot of people either shook their head, looked at it, or raised their hand. Part of the law is that it has to be disseminated and reviewed, but also must be rehearsed. Rehearsed is not sitting in the classroom saying, yep, I got it, check. Rehearsed is, we did a little drill. You don't do a fire drill from the classroom saying, okay, here's the map, here's where we would go if there was a bomb, or if there was an active shooter, or if there was a fire drill. You actually have to physically go do it. That's part of the law. A lot of people get slack with that. Now, it can be done with just athletics, it can be done in the spring, it doesn't matter when. I would say that it probably should be done seasonally if you have new coaches, but if you have coaches that keep rotating and, same coach that does different seasons, maybe not. But what you rehearse for a football or a soccer is different than what's gonna happen at wrestling or basketball. Different buildings, different doors, different access points, different everything, different personnel, kind of things. But you need to make sure you're considering that because it is written in the law that you are supposed to be doing that. Now, on the high school level, they check them on it. TPI, I don't think has come out and checked anybody, on the middle school level, in that sense, but it's the same law, and the law is for secondary schools, which includes middle. So just to be the best proactive person you can be, that might be something you start incorporating. Or your feeder high schools, ask them to come over and help you. Or you incorporate with them. Half the high schools I was at shared facilities with middle school. So those are times you can work together and do it, or do it as a county once, and then just kind of review it for your venue specific stuff, but we practice it one as a big group. It kind of goes on there. And make sure you include last year, I see a lot of familiar faces. So last year I showed you the video of the Matthew Maine Jean story, which is an outside the lines ESPN kind of thing about the soccer kid that died in Kentucky, and how the coach and the athletic trainer and everybody responded or didn't respond appropriately to the issues and stuff like that. Where are your AEDs? That should be on your EAP, because part of the emergency is where do I go get the equipment to help in this situation? Is it locked? Is it done, and all that kind of stuff. So just know that there's a lot of pieces here that we're like, oh yeah, I did the forms. Oh yeah, I did this. There's a lot of other pieces of this law that we sometimes forget because it's inconvenient to have to do it. So just realize that there's more to it that you are technically responsible for. And they're gonna come to you first as the AD. You know, it's your ship. The other part, you're gonna see some changes in, the forms have not changed. The forms might modify, they're in the process of looking at it. But how we deal with concussions in terms of rehab and recovery is changing, right? In the old days, last month, our typical way was, in order to start doing the RTP, when you saw the physician or whoever your provider was that was looking at it, we waited until you were asymptomatic, all your symptoms were gone. And when all your symptoms were gone for like 24 hours, then we started you on the RTP. And we let you do one step per day as long as you didn't have symptoms. If you had symptoms, you repeated the step. You failed it more than twice, you contacted the provider, said, what would you like us to do? Sometimes they said, just keep staying at that level. Sometimes they bumped you back a level. It was up to them. We have found through research that early activity actually helps even if they're mildly symptomatic. So you will start seeing doctor's notes in the RTP saying it's okay, even though they have some symptoms, some mild symptoms, to start doing steps 1, 2, maybe 3. That is perfectly normal and acceptable now. All right. Now, not every provider is going to be doing that. All right, but that is what the research is saying, and a lot of them are starting to do that. So don't freak out and say that's wrong. No, early on. Now, it doesn't mean they're going out playing football. It's a very controlled, non-contacty kind of thing. It's not like, oh, well, you can do stage 3, so it's okay for you to play dodgeball today. No. You know, the things are flying at your head and those kind of things, not the same thing. Could they shoot basketball? Could they do jump shots and layups and jogging? Probably. Can they box out and throw elbows? Probably not. So don't put them in live scrimmages and, you know, be smart in that sense. But realize that that is a change that is happening, but it's going to be the provider that chooses it, not you.
So I had a situation this last season in football, and I'm a girls basketball coach, but I also do first responder and help the AD out. And we had a kid in football, he got hurt on Monday night, went to the doctor on Tuesday. The doctor said start RTP on Wednesday, which was fine. I did Wednesday, I did Thursday. He failed Thursday, and then I started that same process on Friday. Mom wanted me to send home the RTP plan, she's gonna do it over the weekend. I said, I don't think it works that way. It has to be a first responder, it has to be someone from the school, because I'm signing off on it. So Monday, she wanted him to play because he rested over the weekend. I said, we don't have the rest of the plan finished, so that created a huge, okay, you can't, I didn't feel comfortable letting a family, because of the same thing, they have a different agenda. So I told her no, it became a huge conversation between the principal and the AD, and I was like, I'm not signing off that he can play Monday. That's gonna be somebody else's choice. So we ended up him not playing in a whole family situation, but I just wanted to verify. We don't turn that over. Once we start the RTP, we don't turn that over to somebody else.
Right, so parents are not the ones that are supposed to monitor. The form talks about there is a possibility, or I think it's a separate form, that's in the same place all those other forms are for virtual monitoring. So there is a way that you can do it without you being there, but it's not you giving it over to mom to do. All right? Now, I haven't looked at the virtual thing because that was more designed over COVID than anything else, but it still exists. So whether that's recorded, live stream it, whatever way they're doing kids these days with technology and stuff like that, whether that's, you know, that kind of stuff, it's possible that it could be done, but you're not relinquishing it to someone else to do. And so, but that's where sometimes these conversations in the parent meetings ahead of time, and usually the person who's complaining is the person who didn't come to the parent meeting. I understand that 100%. You know, I've been to many parent meetings where there should be 1,000 people in there and there's 40, you know, kind of stuff, even though it's a mandatory meeting. I get it and stuff like that. And you just say, it was discussed in the early meeting and stuff like that. Here's the thing. Now, maybe you create a cover form that goes with it that kind of explains the concussion process for your area. If the concussion is suspected, they must see a provider. The provider must have this kind of credential, so they don't go to a chiropractor or something like that. And once they're cleared, they start their RTP. The RTP must be monitored by school personnel. Like, write it out as like, here's the process a concussion goes through and stuff like that. And all documentation must be done on X forms and stuff like that to be able to help mitigate some of that thing. You're always gonna have my child is the exception person. We all have, I mean, every child is an exception according to those parents, you know, kind of thing. But just know that you're gonna start seeing more early activity while they're still symptomatic. Now, should that be, I'm doing this and they're becoming debilitated, they can't, the headache's getting so, no. It's okay to have a 2 or 3 headache out of a 10 scale while you're doing the activity. It's not a complete kind of thing. So just know that that's one of the things that's going on there. Heat illness. It's always been, at least in my mind, one of the things in the forefront, because it doesn't make any difference, you're always dealing with heat. The hard part this year, when I looked at that calendar, I went, ooh, that's not gonna be fun, is that you don't have a preseason. I know you have the 2 weeks, you have the 3 weeks and stuff like that, but in the high school world, our calendar in our counties is the pushed up version, so the exams are done before Christmas, which meant that the first day of practice is July 31st, right? That Wednesday for high schools. And middle school sometimes are a week or so afterwards. Teacher work days start that Thursday. We will not have, other than that first day at Wednesday, we will not have the ability to have a morning practice. Every practice will be at the hottest part of the day, starting on day 2. So the acclimatization is gonna be brutal this year. Normally we have roughly 2 weeks of morning practices, getting into shape, getting used to wearing pads, and then we abuse them and switch to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The problem is, you're still gonna have heat issues. So you're a month earlier, it feels like, you know, in that one aspect, classes start earlier, which I used to like because it made my schedule easier, but it's gonna be very hard physiologically and environmentally. This is a super hot week. You know, we're in the mid to upper 90s in a lot of places. That's gonna be, well, we can't even practice then. We can't practice until 7 o'clock at night because of the temperature. Kinds of things. So, one, make sure your county, your school, everyone is on the same page with what we're following in terms of environment. Some counties have done it where if the county AD gets word that it's too hot, that word goes out to every school, whether it's their temperature or not, and nobody's practicing at that time to keep it fair. Other times it's like, if you have your independent device and you can prove that it's X, Y, or Z and it's safe for you to do X, Y, or Z, then it's independent based on where you are. That's fine too. Just make sure you've got the system, and then make sure as the AD, if you know what the temperature is and it puts you in a category, which I'll show in a second, the categories, you have a way to disseminate that information to everyone that's outside right now. It doesn't help to go, well, football, you have to modify, you have to modify, you have to modify, and then soccer and cross country are out there running around and nobody knows where they are. On campus, off campus, group text, whatever method you want to do, when a modification has to be made, whether that's I can't go out or you can't go out till you, or this amount of times and breaks and those kind of things, you make sure you have a way to get it out, you know, to let them know. Also have a plan, which should be your EAP, how to deal with it should you get into a problem. Whether that's cold tub, you know, kind of stuff like that. It doesn't matter whether you have the thermometer or not, you still have to treat it regardless. And if you don't have tubs and stuff like that, a $10 tarp will do the same thing. Lay the tarp down, ice them up, hold up the edges, you just make yourself a tub. Like, you don't have to have magic expensive equipment, but you have to have a plan. You know, the last 2 schools I was at, 0 shade whatsoever anywhere football was. So it wasn't like, oh, we can take a break and go over here, we can, no, you're stuck, you know, kind of thing. So have some kind of a plan to deal with it, home and away, you know, kind of thing. This is available on the High School Association website. This is the standard that the country goes by in that sense. We use, as I say, wet bulb globe temperature is the official method of how we do stuff, all right? There is on this categories 1, 2, and 3. North Carolina has adopted category 2. So those are the numbers we follow. Other parts of the country with different climates have adopted different categories, you know, in that sense. And the only difference is the temperature change. So like some states, we use 90 as our cutoff for a wet bulb of we can't be outside doing athletics. Some have 92, some have 86. It just depends on where they are. You know, you can't take kids from Maine, put them in Georgia, and you can't put a kid in Georgia, out in Hawaii. You know, everybody's climate's different, and that's what that's designed for. Green doesn't change anything. Think about stuff. Change a few things, and you can't do certain things, or your limits are there. Black, you can't go out. Military uses the same kind of thing. All right, it's pretty common. But make sure this gets disseminated out, and you guys have your rules of here's what you can and can't do. Right? Football is the only one that wears equipment for the most part in high schools or in middle schools, because you don't have lacrosse and stuff like that, where there's a few other sports, obviously at the high school level. And so most coaches are like, oh, well, we don't have equipment, so we're okay, we can do what we want to do. No, you can't. Cross country can run in the shade as easy as they can run in the sun. You know, they maybe have to pick where they're going and what they're doing, time of day. Cross country sometimes, at least the high school has more flexibility to go in the morning. Middle schools don't drive. It's a lot more of a hardship to change the time of practice based on parent rides and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But just make sure that everyone is aware of their where they are, what they're doing, and how they do it. And you have a way to get that information out. And even though you may say, well, it might be a little different baseball versus soccer, at one school, I would just have one rule. Now, whether all the schools are following the same, we're all done in the county, but at least at your school, when you tweet out, we're done until otherwise, or until 6 o'clock, or until whatever. There is actually a website that can predict it to a certain degree. It's a prediction, so it's just like the weather, it doesn't have to be right. I don't have that on here, but there is a website you can go to that will take all this stuff into account and say, you put in your zip code kind of thing, and it'll say, this week's wet bulb is predicted to be this, this, and this. It's fairly accurate. You know, Noah did it, out of Chapel Hill, I think, was one of the other partners that did it. That can help you plan as an AD, especially when you have games coming up. You know, in that sense, that I know sometimes you're like, we're middle school, so we play at 4 and 5:30. At 4 o'clock, that's unlikely. If you're in a heat advisory and you're already in the black, games don't have to follow this, as dumb as this is. Yeah, so the rule actually reads in the high school association that the athletic trainer person is in charge of weather until it's game day, and then it's the ADs and coaches get to make decisions. The dumbest rule known to man, one of the dumbest ones. They'll listen to us, but they can do what they want. And then my bad part of that is I look at it and say that's the money rule. If it affects the money, we get to make the decisions, but if it's money's not a factor, then let the person who is best at it do it, you know, kind of thing. So, but that may help you say, hey, we have to push it back. At least, even professional soccer has, if it hits, theirs is 86, if it hits 86, it automatically necessitates an extra water break. And soccer doesn't have timeouts, but even Major League Soccer stops at the 20-minute mark and has a 5-minute break. So you can do things to adjust your games to say either push them back a little bit, or here's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna take breaks X, Y, and Z. And as long as everyone's on the same page before you start, it's okay. You know, I've never had a referee, even though I'm not in charge officially. I've never gone out to an official saying, hey, let's take extra, like every 4 minutes, let's take an automatic scheduled but uncharged timeout. No 70-year-old referee that's out of shape has ever told me, no, I don't want a water break in August. They're all for it too, you know, kind of stuff. And the more you can prevent stuff from happening, the less you have to work afterwards. part of your EAD, make sure that you have that, like Matthew and Jean mentality, you know, AEDs. I know this, part of the problem with some of the schools is they buy what's on sale. And so you can walk through a school and have 6 different types of AEDs there because the brand was on sale that year and whatever have you, or that one's discontinued. I can't find the parts for this one. There's still some issues finding parts, batteries, pads, for things that expire. If it expires and you don't have replacement, keep the expired ones. Something that works halfway is better than doesn't work at all, in that sense. Plus, it's also good for training and other purposes afterwards. Like, don't throw away pads that haven't been used. Okay. I'm not saying one's not better than the other. All right, so it's whatever's effective. But think about the Matthew and Jean story, where they brought the AED from, how close it was, the timing, doors, locks, all that kind of stuff. Consider it. And so when you come to a capital budget, leftover money at the end of the year, things like that, instead of buying more of this, more of that, do I have enough of these? You know, and do it from a county level, or, you know, those kind of things, because it's a health and safety issue. We've got a budget for health and safety. You know, consider, say, hey, we've got 2, our school's so big and we're off-site, you know, this, that, and the other kind of thing. Look at doing these things. You can get them as low as probably $800. You can go $3,000 with them, stuff like that. Size and cost isn't the factor. All right, accessibility and knowing how to use it. And if you do have all the different kinds, make sure people know how to use them. They all work about the same. Some you open it, turns on, some you have to turn it on itself. They all work and give you the steps, step by step by step of how to do it. So it's not a big deal, but just make sure you're thinking those kind of things. Where do I keep them? Where's the closest one? Multiple events, kind of thing. Several years ago, another law went into effect requiring EpiPens be available on campus. All right, it's been there for a couple years. The problem that we have run into is the implementation of that. The law itself says that the EpiPens must be available during the school day and all school activities. And in most places, they're in the nurses or front office. Few people have put them like in their own little separate AED boxes, and they're right next to the AED and stop and bleed kits and those kind of things. Problem is, almost every single one of them is inside the school. Athletics is rarely inside the school. And so is it available for all school activities when the football field is way down there? No, the alarm's on, the building's locked. You can't get up there and get back and save someone's life who stopped breathing. All right, so you're not following the law. All right, so if that's the case of what you got there, maybe you have a conversation with your administration and say, should we get another one or move one of the ones we have to an athletically accessible location? Whether that's the concession stand, that's central, maybe it's with your first responder, maybe it's someplace that your coaches have a key, the field house or whatever. I'm not saying there has to be one everywhere, that's not what it says. It just has to be accessible. And then when someone pointed this stuff out to them, they exempted school buses from the law because they knew they weren't gonna have one for every single, because the school activity is getting to and from the activity. So they exempted the fact that every bus didn't need to have one in the bus. Right, so they do know that school activities. Now this includes band, plays, you know, club, I don't know what else schools do these days, you know, stuff like that. But if those things are going on, it needs to be accessible. That accessibility also covers the faculty people. You probably have already been trained. It's probably one of the things you do during some of your teacher work days or something like that. But if not, you need to have the training for it. Like how do I use this? How do I do it so I don't stab myself and I put the right end going the right way and all that kind of stuff. There are 2 versions. There's the adult and pediatric. Middle school, for the most part, unless they're a tiny, tiny, tiny kid, they're all gonna be this. And in case of an emergency, use the bigger one. You won't hurt them. Single use, they're expensive as snot. And they were hard to get for a little while, but they're $200 a piece, you know, kind of thing. But get it through health and safety. I wouldn't try to get it through your budget, like through athletics. I know it's already strapped as it is, or that's half your budget or whatever, you know, kind of stuff. But make sure they understand that law applies to athletics as well, and that they need to make sure athletics is covered in that. Scheduling conflicts. Holy cow. If you are lucky enough to have a first responder or an athletic trainer, they can only be one place at one time. And I know that there's an ease in scheduling multiple events at the same time on campus. Just realize that because that one person can't be everywhere, that if they're not there, that duty of care goes to the coach. If something happens, all right? If you do have someone that's gonna be doing that role, you need to help make the decision of what is covered and what is not covered. Where do I station them? If you have football going on away and that takes them off, so now you have a free soccer field or a free other field, you have another event going on, realize your first responder probably just went with football, possibly, and now you have nobody on campus, which is okay, but you need to help make that decision of where am I putting that person? Because if they come back, or a parent comes back and says, why didn't I have them at my school? You better be able to justify why you put them A, B, or C. You have to make the decision. It's not like, oh, I can just avoid making the decision. The decision has to be made. So make the decision based on science or reasoning. This was the highest risk sport. This was the sport that was the farthest away from any other help. Everyone else had this, or this, kind of thing. So justify why you choose what coverage you're choosing. And when you can avoid it, I know the high school does it all the time. Away JV football, home soccer, because they can't be on the same field at the same time. Well, then soccer parents are mad because there's nobody there, but the high school association says you have to be with football, home or away. Okay, so let's not schedule volleyball, baseball, softball, soccer all the same night. I can only be in one place, kind of stuff. And if I can't do all those things, consider who all that impacts. It impacts you, but does the AD have to be at every sport? No. You can more easily bounce around, and there's certain sports that do attract you more because of the busyness of it, a football game versus a soccer game, kind of stuff, or baseball, softball kind of thing. So just realize that when you guys make schedules, or you let your coaches make schedules, they're doing it independently a lot of times. Coach is like, oh, well, it's just 2 weekends that I'm having these tournaments with 15 teams, and you didn't ask me, but you did it over, oh, well, Thanksgiving, nobody's doing anything, let's host a tournament. Oh, it's Christmas, let's host a tournament. That's my time off, that you just required me to work without asking me, kinds of things. So make sure before things get too solidified that at least those conversations are had to make sure you can get coverage, you have coverage, or you're okay with no coverage. If you're okay with no coverage at tournaments, I would make sure that gets included in the information that goes out to the teams. We are not providing X, Y, or Z, or we're only providing water and ice. You have to do things. We are not, our AT will not be here, or first responder, or whatever. Just be upfront with it. That way you're not being held as bad in that sense. So just make sure you know what you're doing, like why you're choosing what you're choosing. Like I said, if you don't have the right person, that duty falls to you, the coach. And you're the head coach of all the coaches. So make sure that they have their first aid, their CPR, that they're at least prepared to deal with something, or how to get help, or whatever it is. Do I need to make little first aid kits for each team? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? How do I do those kind of things? Everyone starts pointing fingers at the end. At the Matthew and Jean story, it was the superintendent, it was the principal, it was the coach, it was this, it was that. All of them actually had a part in it. And pretty much everyone in that circle didn't do their part. Always like, every time you point a finger at one person, there's 4 pointing back at you and stuff like that. You're in charge, you're gonna be thrown under the bus, I guarantee you. Because of your role. So be able to deflect what you can by doing the right thing, making sure they're as prepared, kick it back to them. Questions, comments, concerns, what ifs? have, which I keep trying to get my person to come to, is they keep running away on me. Weight room. Make sure you have qualified individuals supervising any weights, that they understand that pre and early pubescent kids cannot and should not train the same way the high school does. It's fine to kind of do the old, well, we're gonna run the same kind of offense and defense of this team because our high schools do it and it's continuity and it helps that way. That may be fine for the weight room too, but it can't be the same. It's gotta be less than, it's gotta be differently. They're skeletally immature, can't handle the same things. Learning the process, learning how to do a squat without a weight, great. Using bands instead of heavy weight, like those, I'm not saying it's not good to lift, it is. But it's gotta be modified correctly for those kids. As we all have been told, although coaches don't seem to understand it, physical activity should never be the punishment. You can't perform, you're not hitting something, you're not scoring, you're not whatever. Physical punishment, rolling, push-ups, running, all that stuff should never be the punishment for not doing something correct. Pick something else, right? Line it up for conditioning. Line the whole team up, we run 40-yard sprints. When I went to high school in the last century, in the 1900s, we had 10 40-yard sprints was our conditioning. Every game we won, we did one less. We lost a game, we added one to it. So usually we were good, so we'd only run 3 or 4 sprints at the end of the season, kind of thing. But is it fair to line up all the animals at a zoo and have them sprint and expect them all to make the same times? No, not even close. But yet we do that with a 300-pound lineman, a 140-pound receiver, and a linebacker. No. You didn't make your time. Get back here, do it again. How many of you can run anywhere, not get there fast enough and have to do it again and be faster than you were the first time? Ain't gonna happen. You're getting diminished returns every single time you do it. So you don't make something, you get something else to do or something additional to do that's not the same thing and stuff like that. My coaches, I don't have a high school anymore, still do that stupid roll around on the ground. Everybody after practice, it was late or whatever it is, lay down, they just roll around the field the whole damn time. If you can't make a free throw, and you didn't make 80% free throws at the end of practice when it was pressure free throws and stuff like that, how am I gonna get better free throws? By running? No, shoot more free throws. I mean, the punishment ought to be trying to correct the behavior, kind of thing and be effective. When I taught, kids who were late to my class, just wrote them down. They came back in during their lunchtime or their thing, and usually they never did that stuff, so they had after school. Now, we couldn't punish them, there were certain things we couldn't do. However, they were voluntarily joined the Campus Conservation Club. That was my own club. All right, what they had to do was, they came and saw me after school, I gave them a trash bag, and they were assigned a specific area of campus, they had to go pick up the trash right after school. Now, twofold. One, they were cleaning up campus, which was good. They hated doing it, and they had to do it in front of their friends. They had to bring the trash back to me when they were done and show me a full trash bag. That's how they got out. Now, some tried to cheat. Go find a trash can, dump the trash into the trash bag, bring it back in it to the full trash bag. Problem is, I assigned them an area, so I knew that area wasn't clean. So I knew that's not where the trash came from. Guess what? See you tomorrow. Kind of thing. So it was not hard, it wasn't physical, but it was mentally more of a challenge to them than anything else. And so they learn the behavior a little better, kind of thing. That's how I felt.